welcome to the BSB Bookathon Winter Edition. We're excited to have you for these sessions. Okay, have we got a panel for you today? I don't think we've ever had one quite like this before. We are talking about book covers, and it is something every author is asked is how do you make your book covers? And the answer is magic usually, but now we have these wonderful people to tell you how it's actually made. So first of all, in no particular order, sorry. And first of all, here is Carsen Taite. Award-winning author Carsen Taite loves every one of the covers that grace her 27 published novels and is in constant awe of the cover designers who work with Bold Strokes Books to make her scattered imaginings into a cohesive, well-branded wrapper for the story inside, and I'm totally with her on that magic. Sandy Lowe has been a senior editor at BSB for going on 8 years. She works directly with a publisher who is Radcliffe, in case you've been living under a rock. At their office in upstate New York, Rad gives all the most fun jobs, like managing the publishing schedule and paying the bills, to Sandy. But every now and then, Sandy gets to spend an hour looking up stock photos of sexy images for BSB book covers, and she calls it work. Well, every job has its perks. And now to our our artists and cover designers. Tammy Seidick's job is to make things look pretty. Her graphic design career started in the mid-90s, around the dawn of the World Wide Web, when she played with crayons, working on the very first Crayola company website. Oh, that's so cool. Moving from advertising agency work to a freelance career in 2002, she has worked with a variety of author organizations, publishers, and indie authors, producing all sorts of printed materials and web-based graphics. Of course, Tammy loves book cover design the best. She had to say that. She was paid to, even though there is never enough time to read all the stories. And last but certainly not least, Jeanine Henning is a children's book illustrator, book cover designer, and brewery brand manager. 20 years ago, she started her career as a conceptual designer for an Xbox and PlayStation game development studio. That's so freaking cool. She designed up the ranks to creative director and soon after art director. She then branched out into the world of branding, marketing, production design, comics, and publishing, where she found her heart's work: children's book illustrations, character development, and cover design. She channels all her experience to produce relevant products ready to contend with an enormous competitive market. So hire these people if you can. Okay, now let us just jump right in here. Sandy, can you walk us through Bold Strokes' process of how a cover is created?
Sure. So BSB gives authors a lot of input on their covers. We feel that the cover is a visual representation or a visual indication of their work, and we want our authors to like their covers, so we're not super dictatorial about the cover. We try to compromise where we can. So I send a Word document, just a basic Word document that has a bunch of questions for the author to fill in about what they would like to see on their cover. They send that back to me, and I read it. And I go, wow, this author has awesome ideas and has picked great images, and I'm going to send this right off to the artist. Or I read it and I go, oh, you know, this is a good idea, but blending 4 images for a cover, like, that's going to make it really busy. Or there's some other problem going on. And so I will talk to the author about their ideas and what they want to see. And we'll often go back to stock image sites and take a look at different images and try to come up with an idea that we both agree will work. And then at that point, I send all the information to one of our lovely artists. And they send me back 2 to 3 different covers. And depending on the design, sometimes it's more if there's slight variations in color or font. So you can have the same cover, 4 times, but they're just in different colors or there's just different fonts, but everything else is the same. So depending on what the design is, depends on how many different covers an author may see. I take a look at those and I sometimes ask for little tweaks. Mostly not. Sometimes I will. Sometimes I'll decide that I don't like one for one reason or another, so I won't send it to the author. But I send the covers to the author, and they send me back an email telling me what they think. And I usually try to phrase it like really kind of sneakily, like, here are your covers. Let me know which one you like best. Let me know which one you want to see on your published book. Like, pick one, right? Pick a cover. And some authors are like, oh, I love this one. We're done, right? Like, this is the cover I want to see. We are so done. Some authors send back tweaks they want to see. Sometimes it's a different font. Sometimes it's changing the angle on an image. So we do a few tweaks, and then the cover is finalized, and the artist sends me the final files. And at that point, at least the front cover work is done.
I noticed you said there that you very subtly say, here's your stuff. She also includes a my favorite is, right, yeah. The not so subtle part of the choosing of the cover process.
Marketing tool, come on. I gotta have input here.
Well, yeah, but also you're like, this is the one that I like. Pick another one, I dare you. So Tammy and Jeanine, how did you get into designing covers, and what are your favorite types of covers to design? And I'm going to go ahead and pick on Jeanine first.
How did I get into cover design? I think it was very organic, based on everything that you just read on the bio, so I don't want to rehash that. But I think I fell in love with book cover designs while working with a local traditional publisher, because you get to, it's a huge challenge to take an author's vision and the editor's input. And now you have to tell the final story for the book. And for me, always in my head, it's like putting a movie poster together. So what is that message that you carry across, and how do you get that book to be the one that a consumer will look at over and above thousands of others? So I think it's that challenge, and every single cover for me is a whole different project from all the other projects that I've done before. So it's something fresh and something new every single time. And even with the challenging ones, there's always something that you learn from it that you then apply on future covers. So it's that continual learning production process that I'm absolutely in love with it.
What's your favorite type of cover to design?
That's really difficult to answer. I think if you can work with one image, and I always try to put something really special onto that image. Let's say it's just a girl on a horse. I will always try to put a lens flare or something somewhere just to make sure I add that little something extra. And if you have that single image cover, it's also the holy grail of the smooth wraparound. So that would be my favorite to work on in terms of a cover. Genre is a different story, but I'm sure that will be a different question.
Yeah, and girl on a horse usually gets picked up pretty quickly when people are browsing. So you know, yeah, girl on a horse, girl on a motorcycle. There they are.
Or with a puppy as well.
I would like to just insert that when I go to Pride events, these two covers, like everybody picks them up.
Very very cool. Mm-hmm. The horse, that got me.
So Tammy, how did you get into cover design, and what's your favorite?
Okay, well, I've been a graphic designer for years, but my mother's a romance author. Well, not my mother, my mother-in-law, sorry. My mother-in-law is a romance author. And she has written probably over 120 books. I'm not sure how many. And way back in 2009, she, along with a lot of other authors, discovered that she had the rights to a huge backlist of books that she now had the rights to, and she could independently publish as ebooks. So it was a rush to Kindle. So everybody and their mother literally were publishing their backlist as ebooks. And since she had a daughter-in-law who was a designer, and I also could figure out how to make an ebook at that point. So I did it all for her at that, at that time. I did the covers and made the ebooks and published them and got her on the way with that. So that's really how it all started for me. And then I ended up, doing some of the same stuff for her author friends. And then it kind of led to more indie authors coming my way. And then I landed, ended up with some publishers and then other author organizations. So it just kind of snowballed from there. My favorite, was that the question?
Your favorite kind to work on?
Well, I like, I guess I've done a lot of romance covers. That's primarily what I've done overall. I've probably made about 1,000 book covers or more. And a lot of it has been romance. So I kind of like to work on non-romance titles just to have something different to do. I've been working on a series of true crime covers from another publisher that just kind of, and I like to read true crime. So that was kind of a different change of pace for me. But I like, atmospheric covers that are, it's sometimes difficult to put people on covers. So generally I like to do something a little bit different, sort of scenery or something like that.
I can see that as a break. You're like, people kissing, people on horseback or whatever. Ooh, dead bodies. Just pile them up.
That's not going to sell the story.
Dead bodies?
Put a dead body on a cover.
On the mysteries, dead bodies.
Sometimes there's like a leg or a hand,
I see.
Just not, but not necessarily. It's usually like a spooky house somewhere or a,
okay. Yeah.
Something's gone wrong horribly.
Tammy, give your mother-in-law a shout out. Let us know her name so our readers can look her up if they want to.
Okay, that's Casey Michaels. Kasey Michaels. She writes contemporary romance, a lot of Regency romance. Yeah.
Cool. All right, thanks.
Yep.
Somebody mentioned Pile of Dead Bodies sounds like an Alley Valley book in the chat, and I think that should actually be the title of her next book. So Carsen and Sandy, as authors, what comes first for you, the cover image or the image of the character in your mind, and how close do you need them to be? Carsen, you're laughing, you go first.
So I get this sheet from Sandy, and first I want to say that in my capacity as event coordinator, I often work with Jeanine and Tammy on advertising, and in addition to book covers. So two more professional and talented people there are not. They're amazing, and really it's cool to be able to meet you and see you and tell you that. But I get this sheet from Sandy and it asks me for a bunch of information, and most of it I have no clue about. Like, are there any important things in the book, symbols, or are there any physical attributes of your characters? And I'm like, I don't know what they look like yet, like I'm not there yet. so I'm like, just here's some people and they work. I can make my character a blonde if I need to. Like she doesn't need to be, I don't need to know that up front for the story I'm telling, but if I find a really good image, then I'll make it work in the book. So definitely, I sometimes buy the shoes and find an outfit around it, is how I like to refer to it.
Smart.
That's very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Sandy.
Yeah, I do a little bit of both, I think. I actually do my covers further along in the process than most of our authors because I'm never quite sure if I'm going to finish my draft. And it seems like it might be better not to do the cover if we don't actually have a book to put it on. So I do have usually quite a bit of the book written by the time I'm looking for images. But I'm also very willing to change if necessary. If I find, a perfect image or whatnot, but the hair color is wrong or whatever, I don't worry too much. I also don't necessarily believe that the cover image or the person or whatnot has to be a literal interpretation of the book. For me, it's just, this is the kind of book that you're going to get, and the cover tells you, you know, information about the genre and kind of what you can expect. But in terms of how the woman or whatever looks, I don't have to meet it exactly.
Well, that's interesting to know. I would think that you would get a, oh, you know, your characters are blonde and this is a brunette on the cover kind of feedback from people. But if that's,
oh, I do.
Oh, okay, okay.
I just don't mind personally.
Yes. So kind of a question for all of you here. How difficult or easy is it to find images specifically for the LGBTQ plus market? Who would like to tackle this first? It's gonna be Tammy. No, Carsen, you don't get to go first. You went first last time. It's Tammy.
Actually, I was just talking about this with my son in the car and this afternoon, because I said I was going to be on this live stream panel, and I was describing the you know, the publisher that it was going to be for and the kind of books that you produce, and that it is difficult to find you know, stock photos showing you know, 2 men or 2 women, and if there is, there are quite a few for sure, but I tend to see them over and over again. So it's, sometimes you can get away with that and kind of crop, you know, in different ways of the image, but it is few and far between, really. So I agree, it's difficult.
Now, Carsen.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've gotten to where I often just look for, if I'm going to put if I do want a woman on the cover, then I generally will look for one woman, because trying to find, I mean, I have a couple that are, you know, 2 women, and it wound up being perfect. But it doesn't always work out that way. Like the couple doesn't always work. The setting they're in, the way they look, the way they're dressed, it's very rare to find that perfect mixture. And I think I've used them all up. So now I'm kind of like, if I can just find one, then, you know, there's, you know, that works for me. It's just finding to represent one character.
I always think it's interesting because I'll find 2 sometimes, and I'll be like, "Ooh, I like, you know, these look like my characters," but I have no idea if they're the same size, or if you would put them on the cover, one's going to look gigantic and the other's going to look very small. She's far in the distance, is what I say. But Jeanine, how hard is it or easy is it to find those sort of images?
I'd say it's both. I like to create covers where it's a combination of images and then you put it together. So I don't necessarily always go hunt for the perfect 2 women together. And I think Sandy will know, I mean, we've been working together for a while now. I'll source images and it looks like they're looking at each other, or it looks like they're in the same environment. And that way you get to create the cover and the right feel and the right setting. But if you go look for images where it's a couple, you never get that in-between perfect set. It's always the very naughty, steamy stuff, or the opposite, where it's like, you look at them and you go like, no, you're not gay. You were just modeling for that. That's fake. You can see the fake. So yeah, I think we get by, and there's some beautiful imagery out there to use, but it is difficult to find authentic gay couplings or whatever. Yeah, it's difficult.
How long did it take you to develop that stock image gaydar?
I'm pretty good with that, actually. you just look at it. It's just, no, that shoulder, it's just, no, you're fake. You're being fake. So,
I was looking up some one time and I found a selection of pictures called, and it was just called Sisters. And the first two, they're just standing there. But after a while, I was like, I don't think so. Not anymore in the latter half of these.
No.
Not so
Depends on the country where they come from, but.
Sandy, how hard is it or easy is it for you to find them?
It's very hard to find masculine of center women, particularly. That is a real struggle. And just as difficult to find, you know, as Tammy and Jeanine were saying, in terms of images that have couples, butch femme couples. Any stock image that has a masculine of center woman is there's just almost none. So that's where I find that we really struggle to find good images. And there are new emerging sites that are seeing this need in the market and are looking into developing more images. So I'm super excited about that. But I think that is the hardest challenge that I have. And these guys will tell you that we often have covers where it's cropped in a way that it could go either way. So the one that I'm thinking of is like the legs cover, you know, where you have a person who's in jeans and boots, and you have a person who's in a skirt and heels. And you can't tell if it's butch or femme or if it's a man or a woman. And so we kind of rely on our readership and our brand to note to the reader that this is, you know, masculine of center female rather than male. And it's always tricky to find the right image that will give that sense and not read absolutely male. So that's kind of interesting. And I hope that they develop more images. I would be really interested if they do.
Yeah.
So has Bold Strokes ever thought about taking some of their own pictures?
Yeah.
We did. Oh God, Rad's gonna kill me. We used to, and I say we, and I mean her, because this was pre my time with Bold Strokes. But before stock image sites were as popular as they are today, BSB would take their own images. And Rad actually appears on one of the very first Bold Strokes books covers. If anyone in the chat room can name the book, I'll give you a free book.
To the internet.
Yeah, can I Google quickly?
Uh-huh.
That's how
I think I know, but I
yeah.
don't need a free book.
Carsen, you don't get a free book. Yes, but we used to, just out of necessity. Now there are so many amazing stock images that we don't necessarily, authors will often do their own photo shoots if they want a really specific image, you know, or they have a friend or whatever they feel really represents their character. They will often send me a photo and ask if they can use it on their cover. But yeah, we use stock photos. It's easy and it's simpler in a lot of ways. There's not a lot of like permissions and whatnot associated with stock photos, but we are always open to author input and author photos.
Actually, Sandy, to your point, it's completely out of probably moving forward, but that's one of the trends for 2021 moving forward is photos taken on smartphones to be used on covers rather than image banks, because there's a drive toward authenticity happening currently in the design world as in general, but I mean, I'm sure that's a conversation for later. So you might circle back to Bold Strokes starting days with taking your own photos at some point.
Sure, that sounds like fun.
So Jeanine and Tammy, do you ever draw cover photos or covers from scratch? I mean, do you ever just create them just totally out of your head?
Yeah.
Personally, I don't consider myself an illustrator, so I rely on stock photos, and then of course I can manipulate the heck out of them. You know, yeah. I can Frankenstein, you know, one person's head on another person's body, and you know, all sorts of body modification
That's how I'm gonna picture you now in a castle with lightning going on in the background.
Yeah. I can combine I can combine like 10 stock images into one scene, but I'm not an illustrator, so.
Like, oh, you don't like your cover? How about a woman with 4 heads? You like it now? So somebody asked a question about, do you prefer to work with stock images or real images? And stock images are often real images, but do you like working more with stock photos than if somebody, say, just sent you a picture? I mean, a picture that you could actually work with, not just some random picture. But, Jeanine?
Both. If the photo is good enough to use for the cover in terms of resolution and in terms of fitting with the direction that's been given, the brief, then it's fantastic to work with a photo that somebody took. Again, coming back to that authenticity, it just feels different from a stock photo. I think there's about 3 or 4 books that I've done for Sandy where it's people's own photographs, and it looks different, it feels different, it looks different on the rack or on Amazon, but then you get some beautiful stock imagery. So it all depends on the brief and the book and the author. It's great working with both.
What about you, Tammy? Do you have a preference?
And I would agree with Jeanine. You know, if the photo is has some sort of artistic quality to it, you know, if it was taken, you know, by someone who knows a little bit about photography, sure, definitely.
Oh, okay, that's really cool. Well, I know a lot of people are asking about this in the Q&A. So, Sandy, what kind of covers do readers seem drawn to? And I guess that's sort of also what kind of covers sell the best? And do you track how this changes over time?
Sure, that's a great question. In terms of feedback that we get on people contacting us to let us know kind of level, it's really variable. You'll have people who will tell us that, oh, I picked up this book because of the puppy, or because of the horse, or because of the sexy woman. And then you have readers who say they don't like people on the cover because they like to come up with their own ideas about what the characters look like, or it makes them crazy if the woman on the cover is a blonde and there's no character in the book that's a blonde. So I think in terms of feedback that I've seen, it's really varied, but covers do have trends and cycles. And I think Jeanine and Tammy can probably speak more coherently to that. Right now, we are seeing a lot more graphic covers, a lot more font-driven covers. Sorry, my dog is unhelpful. Covers are a lot more font-driven, so really big text, kind of taking up a lot of the cover, not a lot of people, a lot of more vector images, which are like the slightly cartoonish kinds of images. But again, this will cycle and this will change. Probably 18 months ago, the big rage was the split image cover, right? Where you would have one image on top and then the title in the middle and then the image on the bottom. So we do absolutely pay attention and keep track and follow those trends because I do think they make a difference. And it's just like clothes or music or whatever, go in and out of fashion.
So Jeanine and Tammy, what trends do you see now and going forward, if you can just see the future for a little bit there, Tammy?
Well, I think this sort of echoes what Jeanine was saying before about authenticity, because I'm seeing a lot of covers these days that they kind of look, it kind of looks handmade almost, right? So it looks like, the script font that is used is either perhaps not a font at all. It's actually just, written. So it kind of, it's a personalized look. So I would say authenticity, handmade looking, a lot of layering and texture is big. A lot of depth. So you want to look into the cover So a lot of pieces going back and in the foreground and the background. I see a lot of, as Sandy was saying about text-driven covers, I see a lot of integration of text into the image. So, you know, the letters are, you know, fading into the image somehow, where they're kind of weaving in and out and, you know, in front of and behind images. And simplicity, I think, is another trend as well right now. You know, not making it too busy, of course, because I mean, the goal of a cover is really just, you're seeing it at a thumbnail size on a screen. That's how people are browsing covers, really small. So you want it to be readability and an immediate, you know, feeling of what the book is about, enough for them to click on it. You just want someone to click on the cover, and then that, you know, what follows next, the blurb or the description of the book, that's what's going to sell it. So you just want an immediate, oh, that looks interesting, and I'm interested in that genre. So.
What about you, Jeanine?
Yeah, completely agree with Tammy in that summary, and also with the typography. The use of typography as an art form is coming back again, and that's a very awesome throwback to, I think, the retro age of the 60s and the 70s, where the use of large, bold fonts was very big on movie posters, which then ties in with this whole new throwback to nostalgic throwback that we're seeing right now in the entertainment industry. If you look at Ratchet, there's a whole bunch of even Stranger Things. So there's this whole nostalgic throwback happening, and it's bringing in this retro look in some of the covers, which I personally absolutely love. The use of typography again as an art form, as I've said, and as Tammy has said, and also making the typography more tactile. So, which is quite challenging for a designer if you're doing, for example, a horror book or a mystery or suspense, and now you just have the typography to work with, but then you use texture on that typography to bring forth a feeling of discomfort or murder or something. So it's definitely bringing back, I think, typography as an art form for covers. And to tie in with what Tammy said about simplicity, the use of larger white spaces is also predominant. For example, specifically to focus the reader or the consumer or the browser's eye on that thing you want them to focus on, like a large white space. And then you have the dead body with the knife through the head, and that's it. That is it. And then you know, okay, this is going to be a Kubrick-esque. So yes, I think that's what I'm seeing without going into too long of a blab.
I'm not going to get that image out of my head for quite a while. Carsen, we talked about people being drawn to the cover of yours with the horse on it and the cover of yours with the motorcycle. But are those really the two that people go to? And then what's your favorite?
Well, it's hard to pick a favorite. But I have a bunch of favorites. And I'll just two kind of sets that well, Jeanine did these. I call them there's one more, I just don't have it handy because, you know, because I don't.
Quite pleasing to work with, Carsen, by the way.
Thank you. So I just found a bunch of legs, said, here, do something with this. And what I really like is, you know, I like the different color that makes it pop on the font. And I think the font kind of makes it. And then Tammy did these, and it's hard to see, but basically it's very simple. Each cover just has a gavel on it. It's a series, and it kind of goes back to what Jeanine was saying about using the font to create that atmospheric feel. And I'm really fond of those, and I like them because they're simple and they don't detract. I mean, it would be hard for someone to say, well, I really don't like sexy legs, or
and this isn't the book for you, pal.
Yeah, what's wrong with you?
You know, I find a gavel offensive. You know, it's just, but it does convey a lot about the story. So those are currently my two favorite sets.
So you like this, yes, more of this trend toward a simplistic cover?
I do. I see covers that look like people took a bunch of things and you know, like stuck them, like it's like a hostage notice or something, you know, they cut them all out, they paste them all together. And it just, I don't know. I think that if you have too much on a cover, if even a very talented designer cannot make that look natural. And I really am liking the simplicity.
Oh, that's really cool. Let's talk for a second about different genres here and what sells more. What types of covers sell better for different genres, and then also how that's changing too. Like I remember picking up old fantasy or science fiction books back in the day, and it was always just like a picture of something that happens somewhat in the book. You know, sometime one scene, and you don't really get a sense, you know, of what the entire book is about. Let's start with Sandy and say, do you think books are received differently cover-wise depending on the genre?
That's an interesting question. I don't know if I can answer that from a reader perspective, if they're received differently by the reader, depending on the genre, but I do think there are different conventions. You see, everyone's been talking about the dead body, but obviously what you will see on a cover for different genres changes. So romances, you often see a lot of people, whether it's a couple in an embrace or it's one woman or whatnot. People are very common on romance covers, but not very common on covers for other genres. You almost never see people on a cover for like a horror or not alive people anyway, or general fiction or whatnot. You see, you'll see a lot of landscapes, say for things like your science fiction, or the image used, I think, changes depending on the genre. And what is really interesting, at least in terms of my job, is I feel like romance is very specific in terms of images of people are really popular in a way that they're not as much for mysteries or sci-fi or fantasy covers.
So Jeanine, kind of the same question, but from a designer's perspective, I'm thinking when you get the sheet or whatever, the specs for the cover, and it says sci-fi as opposed to mystery or romance, that you have an idea in your head that's just different depending on the genre.
I mean, yes, by default, your approach is going to be different from a horror to a romance. But I get the visuals in my head based on what the author's written. And that is one of the reasons why I don't really do Zoom meetings with my clients, because if you're an author, you're going to write to me what you are writing in your book. And that's where you get the feeling from. And I work from a place of feeling. What does the brief or the author make me feel in their story? How do you describe your characters and their angst or their journey? And based on that, that's how I then create the book. I'm lucky that with Bold Strokes, the book cover, I've got Sandy, who's between me and the author. So she translates quite a lot. Where I'm working directly with authors, I have to translate for them what they want for the cover often. But that's part of the journey. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, but for me, it really is how you as an author make me feel, because that's how a reader is going to feel, except I put a picture on that feeling. Don't know if that makes any sense.
It does. And so you're saying, like, it's, you know, you're like, oh, it's a bright, happy book, you want to have a bright, happy cover. You don't want like a cover that's dark with a pile of dead bodies.
Pretty much, because when you look at it as a consumer, it's not just always about the image or the pictures on the cover. It's how it makes you feel. And for me, that's a big, if you can get that right to the cover, you've got a book that will sell. It's that feeling.
So Tammy, do you work that way too, sort of on feeling, or do you have sort of a picture in your head when you think of genre?
Well, I mean, I would say there's definite and specific cover types for genres. I would say sometimes, I mean, clearly if there's a couple or a person on the cover, it has some sort of romance in it, whether it's romantic suspense or it's a contemporary romance, or I tend to think it's a fine line between like, like women's fiction and romance. There's a kind of a fine line. And I think sometimes romance covers kind of tend to start to look a little bit more general fiction-ish than, you know, a reader is, when you see it, with romance, your reader wants to know exactly what they're getting, I would say. So I think it needs to be clear that it's a romance. And I think sometimes that's with the publisher, sometimes that's with the author name, you know what you're getting already. But if it's not clear by those other ways, it needs to be clear somehow that it's a romance. So whether it's in the font or the image choice, it needs to be crystal clear. Yeah. And I think also with showing, say we're showing a couple on the cover in some way, I think whether they are far away, it can be differently interpreted and felt than say a couple that is zoomed in and close up, because you know you might be getting a different type of story. So with a couple that's kind of zoomed in and close up, you might be getting a more intimate story. When it's something sort of like, you know, it's a scene in the background, it's more of like, I don't know how to describe it, but not quite as maybe.
The romance may not be the central focus, you know?
Yeah, perhaps, yeah. I would put it that way. So I hope that answers your question.
No, I think it does. And I keep going back to how I've seen people pick up Carsen's books at Pride or any time that we've had sales where they're like, okay, these are clearly romance. And this woman has a knife. You know, she's going to stab somebody. She might kiss somebody else, but she's definitely going for the stabbing first.
Well, it's like those series I just held up, you know, The Legs, that's a contemporary romance series. The Gavel with the scary words, you know, like the scary looking words, it automatically, you know, triggers that it's not. And I didn't come up with anything to do with those fonts or anything like that. And that's why I love that Bold Strokes works with professional designers, because I'm not one and I do not know jack about this. I have sometimes scribbled a stick figure thing on a piece of paper and sent it in. Like, I kind of think maybe, and then they do magic with it. And I don't want to have to think about those kind of things. I mean, like, I like to have input, but I don't want to have to try and come up with it out of whole cloth. And so to have designers who are aware of the conventions of graphic design and how those work and what's trending is a gift to an author. It really is.
I agree. Well, Sandy, as someone who's worked behind the scenes and has now written books as well, when you're thinking about your covers, are you like the rest of us where you're just like, you know what, I'd like some of these things and otherwise I don't care? Or are you thinking of all the stuff that you know from the back end and thinking about sales trends and fonts and all this stuff? I guess my question is, are you a pain in the ass to work with for the designers?
Oh gosh, that might be a question better answered by the artists than by me. I don't know. I think I often have ideas. Sometimes they're very different. For the last cover that Tammy did for me, I think I sent her like 3 different ideas and they're all like completely, totally not even in the same realm as each other. It's like, I like all of these and let's see which one works. So I do think that my experience plays in terms of, I will look at a stock image and imagine how it would look on the cover. Because things like, as Tammy and Jeanine were saying, zoom and distance in the original image can really determine how you use it on the cover. And some images are really, really up close and, you know, work well in some covers and not in others. And some are, you know, really, really far back. So I think I have a good eye for what kind of image would work well on a cover in general, just because I spend a lot of time looking at images and picking them for covers. But yeah, other than that, I think I'm just a person who wrote a book and I don't have too much advantage.
Well, that's disappointing.
I know, right?
Yeah, gosh. Jeanine and Tammy, let's take a question from the Q&A here. People would like to know, what is your go-to cover designing software? Jeanine.
Photoshop. I know it's absolutely Photoshop. Obviously, if I'm illustrating, I still start with pencils on paper. That's where you get that soul in the characters and the art from. Still that old school pen to paper, but I still design in Photoshop, and I think it's because it's my canvas. So that's where I put it all together.
Tammy, you're also a Photoshop fan.
Yeah, I agree. Photoshop. Yep. I mean, of course, if you need to do any vector work, Illustrator, you know, yeah, for certain things, manipulation, but for sure, I mean, for me, for book covers, it ends up in Photoshop.
I understood the word Photoshop and almost nothing else that you said. Vector sounds like math, so I'm just going to stay away from it. Do the two of you have a favorite cover that you've done for Bold Strokes? Anybody? Yeah. What is it?
You better pick one of Carsen's.
I'm to pick one of mine.
Well, no, I think my favorite one, and there's a good reason for this, was First Position by Melissa Braden, because when Sandy gave me that cover, I'm like, okay, Sandy, trust me, I'm in, I'm good, I'm fine. So that was when I knew that I'd arrived in the Bold Strokes universe. And then after that, I think the one that pops out first, and it's because of a puppy, is Sit, Stay,
Love.
Yes, Karis Walsh. Yes. Mm-hmm. And then obviously the Sexy Legs Carsen.
Yes.
I just want to say, Jeanine is such a Melissa Braden fan. I always get those covers back in like you know, an hour, and there's always like 14 of them.
And I read them all.
That's such a fan.
What about you, Tammy?
It's hard for me because I have a tendency to forget covers, to be honest. Like the ones that Carsen put up on her iPad with the gavels, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about those. So I will say that I'm glad that I could find a picture of Nicole Kidman for Carsen's cover. I was watching you yesterday and you're like, I guess Nicole Kidman's on my cover.
Yes, she is.
So beyond that, I really do like designing covers for first-time authors, because I think that's really special. And I think I've done that a few times for some Bold Strokes authors. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a special excitement there. So I like that.
Well, are both of you available for freelance work right now, or are you too busy to take on new people?
Never too busy.
You're too busy. You're too busy, Tammy.
Jeanine said never too busy.
I'm never too busy.
Never too busy. Okay. Well, somebody was asking for your contact info in the Q&A. So I didn't know if you wanted to give your website or something real quick where people can contact you.
Tammy, would you like to go first?
Oh, sure. I have a website. It's mybookcoverdesign.com, but I haven't updated it in a long time. So But that would have my contact information.
And Jeanine?
Yeah, I keep mine easy. JeanineHenning.com. Slightly narcissistic, but keep it real.
If you get a chance to buy slightly-narcissistic.com, I think you should, because I think that. And Carsen and Sandy, before we go, what are your newest releases?
I'll go. I have If You Dare, and I don't know if this kiss is going to pass Jeanine's gaydar. It's a little wonky, but I liked it. I liked the rest of the image.
I'm very excited about that kiss. I can see that. They're excited about it.
This is an erotic romance from the kissing and the cleavage. Hopefully you can tell that. It just came out this December. The
Kissing and the Cleavage, the new anthology by Sandy.
Right.
Hey,
Carsen.
So my newest is, it comes out in February. It's Spirit of the Law.
Nicole Kidman falls in love.
I know, right? and there's danger.
Yes, as you can tell by the cover not having two people in an embrace on it.
And the word law.
Yeah, there's that. I don't know, maybe the sexy courtroom law things and stuff. You should have if you had the cover image, the background's a courtroom, and then two people getting it on one of the tables. I think
that happens all the time.
It does, yeah. Well, I would like to thank my lovely panelists for being here with me today.
Thank you guys.
Bye.
Nice meeting you.